Hey, Allie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So glad to be here.
Now, could you just say hello to everybody listening and let them know who you are and what you do?
Of course. So I'm Allie Cudby. I am the founder and CEO of Alignmint Growth Strategies, and I help companies improve customer retention and growth in their post-sales environment.
I love it. Okay, so I have a couple of questions to clarify. Number one, what do you mean by post-sales environment?
So the way that you think about your customer after the point of sale should be really intentional. And what happens in a lot of companies is there's a focus on how do we get new customers in the door and less attention to how should we nurture those relationships after they've plunked down their credit card so that they keep buying from us in the future.
Okay, that makes total sense. And then you mentioned Alignmint, but you said you emphasized the mint. Help me understand that one.
Sure. So the company is actually called Alignmint, MINT, Growth
Okay.
Strategies, because when you plant mint, it grows like crazy. And when something is awesome, it's in mint condition. And when you make a lot of money, you make a mint.
I love it. Now I want to change my company to Mint too, basically, because I'm like, this is a great analogy. Okay, great. So we're going to talk a little bit about, what you just mentioned, the post-sales environment, exactly how we can maximize what we're doing as business owners. What would you say is one of the biggest, I want to say mistakes, but I want to say it's something that we overlook when it comes to growing our business using our existing customer base?
So the thing that people don't do as often as they should is have that intentionality from the get-go. You thinking about what that customer journey looks like from the moment that they engage with you for the first time, so pre-sales as prospects, and then not just through the sales process, but truly thinking about what that whole journey looks like. You make your money as a company based on the customers that you retain, not the customers that you bring in the door the first time. But really, companies tend to over focus on front end sales and under focus on the retention side of growth. So, thinking about what that entire journey looks like is one key thing that people can do to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the most underemphasized sources of revenue. I think that people assume that in order to use your analogy, even with mint, right, or with planting, is they think they have to plant a new garden or plant a new plant every time they want to harvest something. And I think they don't realize what they already have going for them. So, what are some of your tips on how to recognize where you have that potential in your existing base where you don't have to seek out new customers all the time? What are some ways that people can start leveraging that?
Yeah. So first, I think is looking at your mindset. There's a very sort of alpha E mindset that gets thrown into the marketplace a lot around sales. And so there's this bias toward front end sales, like, oh, we're hunters and gathering is for ladies. And you know, I don't know why it gets feminized like that's a bad thing, but it does. And the reality is that hunting is great and so is farming. And if you don't farm, then you're putting way too much emphasis on the quality of your hunt, to like torture this analogy a little bit. And so, there is this mindset in the business world, and I'll throw it a little bit on sort of the tech bro culture that doesn't help, that sales is really like the be all end all, and it's just not. So
Yeah.
that would be the first thing. Second is having a clear and consistent thought process about how you're going about it. And it's not just about the having them buy again. The stepping stones to having a customer buy again start way before they're ready to buy again. So what is their experience look like with you? It's, once they've signed on the dotted line or they've swiped their credit card or whatever it is that they do to start an engagement with you, how are you being really intentional and consistent about how you welcome them aboard, how you onboard them, how you guide them to success with your products and services, and how when they are in a place of potentially needing more from you, you're really serving them by selling. And if you come in too hot too fast, then you're probably going to lose credibility and trust and relationship building. But also, if you never make another offer, you're not ultimately helping your customers. If they're getting value from you, give them an opportunity to get more value from you, or at least share with them how to spread the word about what it is that you do. One of the
Yeah.
things I find that companies don't do well is cue their customers on how to be helpful. Like if you want
Yes.
a testimonial, people aren't going to spontaneously give it to you. You need to ask for it. But if you also want them to share, like if you've created a genuine relationship with your customers and you want them to share the value that they have received with people that they know, you have to cue them. They're not necessarily going to think of it on their own.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's such a mistake that people make, is not having that conscious cueing. But I love that. So you brought up this one phrase where you're saying serving through selling, that you see it as a service. And I'll go one step further with when we sell, we're selling kind of the solution to a problem, right? We're recognizing that there's some type of problem or gap or something that we can help to fill or help to solve for somebody. What people don't realize is, tell me if you agree with this, is that I think that when you solve one problem, you then create another, or you lead them to the next problem. And they're going to initially trust and want you to help them with that next problem. Even if it's not as, if it's as simple as something that recurs or happens again. And I think that what people think and they don't recognize is that by solving one thing, you've now opened up the next step in their journey. And if you're not the provider for that, there's a missed opportunity. Would you agree?
100%. I'll give you an example from my own business with a client that I'm working on right now. So they got in touch with me. They had a real customer churn problem. This is a business to business technology product. And they were bringing customers in and losing them. And so they said, like, we've got to fix that, retention moment. So they were really focused on renewals. And so that's where we started. We started by looking at their renewals as the fire that they had to put out immediately. And so we put the fire out. Things are going a lot better. But what they've realized is like, oh, you know what? Actually, we have an onboarding problem too. Like we thought we had an okay onboarding system. Turns out that if we want to get them to this great renewals place, we need to improve our onboarding place. And I haven't tried to sell them a thing. And they have really come to say, oh, we value the outcomes that we're getting from this renewal piece, and that really helps the money problem. But now we see all these other ways that we can be doing better, and that's going to not just help us with renewals, but it's going to help us with upsells and cross sells, and it's going to help us with reputational value in our niche and all of these other things. So it's been a great client for me. I'm not doing
Yeah.
anything to sell them except showing up and showing them the better possibilities.
And what you're doing is we'll say subconsciously training them to go to you with these types of issues and to address you first as a possible solution. And I'll give you an example from my business as well, is I have a couple of companies that I'm working with that are like, I want to sell my business. And we've been working, this is one of the things we focus on, is building a sellable business, whether you want to sell it or you don't, because then at least you're building a business that is attractive and valuable.
Right.
So if we're building valuable businesses, now they're like, hey, I'm thinking of selling. And they're asking me to essentially broker the transaction and get involved. And I'm like, well, I don't get involved in the actual sale that much, at least not yet. What I'm doing is I'm saying, I'm going to partner with, I'm still going to be the trusted person you can come to, but I'm going to partner with people who do the supplemental services as well. Because I think what people misunderstand, especially with my prior statement, is that like you must be the whole journey for that person, or you have to provide for that whole journey on the recurring basis, where I'm like, actually, you just have to kind of guide them and be along for the ride and always be someone that they can call on and build that relationship. Because I'm going to send them to a specialist in the tax area or a specialist in the valuation area. I can't be everything to everybody, but I can usher them along and find people that I trust, and then therefore build my trust as well and create that customer retention.
Totally. I mean, think about it as going to the doctor. You may have a really great, trusted family doctor, and they may be able to help you with lots of things. But if you go to them and you need surgery and they say, I'm not a surgeon, let me put you in touch with a really great surgeon that I vouch for, and they are not just good, but they're really good for the kind of surgery that you need, you're not going to turn around and say, how dare you not perform my surgery? You're
Right.
going to say, that's great. I feel so much better about this recommendation because it's coming from somebody that I trust.
And I love that you brought up, so there's customer retention from like, I guess from a sales standpoint, there's that like renewals focus too. But then you brought up something interesting when you were talking about your client, which was the actual retention of existing engagements and making sure that there's customer satisfaction. So let's talk a little bit about, number one, how we can drive more renewals in our businesses if we have recurring models, let's say, or create a recurring model where we can drive more retention, but also how customer satisfaction and feedback plays into that.
So customer satisfaction and feedback are huge. It gives you an opportunity. Let me just take a step back. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're building a relationship with your customers. You're building trust. And sometimes if you get feedback, and even if it's negative feedback, it can be coming from a customer that is genuinely rooting for you. They want you to do better. You and I actually met in a not dissimilar way. You gave me some feedback, like you reached out to me blind and gave me some feedback about a vendor that I had hired and the way that they were portraying me in the marketplace. And you're like, I just think you should know that this vendor may not be doing you a service. That was really valuable feedback. It helps me. And, and from there, we built a relationship, and here I am on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
So just because somebody gives you bad news doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. And in fact, there's some really amazing statistics out there that say that this is a little bit of a tangent, but I love the statistics so much, and I'm nerdy for statistics. If you screw something up with a customer, but you fix it to their satisfaction, they're 83% more likely to become more loyal to you than if you hadn't had the mess up to begin with. Fascinating, right?
It is. That is really fascinating. But I also think it's because you've now proven in context your dedication and your commitment, in a sense that like how you react to negative feedback or F-ups, I think tells a ton about you as a business. And I think that the more you can reveal that and make that evident to someone, ideally without the sacrifice of the mistake, but I think the more that you can showcase that, it really does build trust. I would agree with that statement.
Yeah. So as it comes back to your original question about customer satisfaction and feedback, one of the things that can happen is that you might be able to guide somebody to another sale. But some of what might happen is that because you've earned trust and because they're satisfied, they may speak about you more favorably in the marketplace. And so it is, it's indirect revenue. So there's the direct revenue that you can get from the customer that you've served well and having them, buy more, buy again, whatever. And then there's the value of their positive, like their good words about you in the marketplace. So there's lots of ways that that's listening helps you out as a business owner. It helps you build customer satisfaction. It helps you learn from your customers. It can also, and it helps you grow revenue. It can also help you clarify what direction you want to go in as a business. There's an infinite number of products and services that you can offer. And the more clearly you build those relationships with your customers, the more clearly you can articulate like, oh, this is something that's going to be of value to them. This is where I want to put my emphasis. In my book, Keep Your Customers, I talk about there being 3 different kinds of loyal customers. So even once you get to the category of having loyal customers, you still need to be able to listen with a clear set of ears to the differences between those kinds of customers. And so the 3 kinds of loyal customers are lazy loyals, and they're the ones that are buying from you just purely out of convenience. And the best way of thinking about that is the coffee shop on the corner of your apartment or your business, right? Or your office. you're probably going to go buy coffee from them a lot. And they may be a really, like you may be really loyal to them while you're living there or working there. But if you move across town, you're not going to go back to that coffee shop. And if they spend their time listening to the things that you want them to do as a business, then they may end up being misdirected in their initiatives because you're loyal, your revenue's good, but it's a lazy form of loyalty just due to circumstance. So what you're looking for are the ones that I call limited loyal or lucrative loyal. So the limited loyals, they're loyal to you, but as long as it's a good transaction for them, right? It's, they're okay, show me the money. And a good example of that is sort of travel rewards. So I'm loyal to Delta Airlines because I like their travel rewards, but they've recently changed their Sky Miles program and I need to reevaluate. Are they still going to be good for me?
We're in that boat too.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, it's
Yeah.
a little more that transactional relationship though. It's kind of the like you scratch my back, I scratch yours, like arm's length distance of I'm loyal to you because you have something in the transaction that is appealing to me, right?
Right. Right. And that's okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
And so, but then there's also those companies or those brands that you are truly dedicated, loyal to. And, they're your ride or die brands. And I have those too. There are companies that, I just don't seek out alternatives to them because I am very happy. And they can even, they can screw a few things up and I'll still probably stick with them through a lot because they've proven themselves to me. And so that's, you can learn a lot from your limited loyals and try and upgrade them to become lucrative loyals. But you really want to listen to those lucrative loyals and you really want to find more people like them. And build your marketing around them and build your growth plans around them because those are the people that are going to stick with you for the long term.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is gold too for people who are, I think we don't examine our existing customer base enough and do this sort of segmentation of why they are my customer. Also, I've noticed that even like the lazy loyals are the ones who probably might be the loud loyals. Or you have to know which voices to listen to because it's like, well, but if you move, like you're gone. Like, we're not lifetime loyal customer friends. Like this is going to be a transactional relationship. And I think you just have to know your relationship with your customers. Do you recommend any particular method to actually segment these people or identify who is in what bucket?
So a lot of times it can be around the feedback that you mentioned before. You learn a lot from your customers based on what they share with you. And so you can seek out that information or you can, get it organically and preferably both. But if you're not, you have to be listening to your customers. And every company is different in terms of how they pull out that information. Sometimes it isn't easy to know the difference between a lazy loyal and a lucrative loyal, right? If I come into your coffee shop every day and I buy coffee every day for a year, that probably makes it seem like I'm a fairly lucrative loyal. You just have to be able to tease apart those differences. And the coffee shop example is a little, the listeners' businesses are probably more nuanced. And so you can find more ways to tease apart the difference. But it is in identifying how do you listen to feedback and how do you solicit feedback.
Yeah, and do you subscribe to and Lord, I should know this, guys. I should know the name of this score. There's one metric that a lot of businesses track where it's how likely are you to recommend us? What is that called?
Yeah, NPS.
Thank you. Okay, Net Promoter Score.
So,
So yes. So do you subscribe to the Net Promoter Score and its importance? Do you recommend people implement something like that? And also, let's explain it for people listening who are like, what the hell are you talking about, Shan?
Sure. So Net Promoter Score is a metric that gained prominence a long time ago. It was created by the guy who founded Bain Consulting Company. And basically, like almost everybody has gotten one of these before. You get an email from a company, it's one question and it says, based on your experience, how likely are you to recommend us to somebody else? And it's a score of 1 to 10. And if you are an 8, 9, or a 10, you are a promoter. And if you are not, you're a neutral or a detractor. And so the goal is to get everybody to be a promoter of your business. So I have many thoughts about Net Promoter Score. One is that you can really go wrong with it on a number of levels. One is and this is something that I see a lot, and oftentimes in smaller companies, so companies under a few $1 million in revenue, you get a detractor score and you say, oh my God, what are we going to do? And you spend a ton of time and energy trying to fix it. And you skip the part where you ask yourself, is this a customer that we need and want to change our focus in order to serve? So this is where knowing your customers and understanding your customers is so important. And I have seen companies go really wrong trying to serve the so-called detractors when really those were just not good customers, not a good fit. And so that is one thing where Net Promoter Score goes wrong. The other is people ask the question, they get the data, and then they don't really do anything with it. And if you're going to ask your customer to take their time and respond to you, the least you can do is do something productive with the data. And so I think that it can be a good guide. There aren't that many good guides out there, but it really does come with like caution flags. And then the other thing is, depending on what business you're in, there are so many people that have seen NPS that they kind of game it. And so it becomes, depending upon the industry that you're in, you have to really ask yourself, are you truly getting an unbiased response? Or are you getting it from somebody who's like, I know what this is, and I want to send a message? And so there can be benefits to it. I'm not completely poo-pooing it. I just think that it is overused and underused strategically.
Yeah. And I think that when you over rely on one metric or you put all your emphasis on that, like you're missing out on multiple dimensions of what that's trying to tell you. I think it's all about how you interpret it and how you're using it in your business. And likewise, you made me think of something else where I'm like, well, what if you asked your employees to also do the same thing to the customers? And be like, how likely are you to want to work with this person again, and see how those match up? Because I bet you like the 3s and the 4s are also the 3s and the 4s. So when it's like, I really want to keep working with this customer, but they're saying when there's a mismatch, I go, that's actually an opportunity just to reconcile the why behind that. And maybe there's something in your process to do. But I think that in isolation, that metric is not as helpful without some type of, rationalization of, okay, well, like you said, is this a customer we want to retain? I think as business owners, we are so emphasized in like trying to please everybody or trying to make everybody happy that, customer satisfaction actually isn't the end all be all, depending on what type of customer they are, right? That's kind of what I'm taking away from that conversation.
Well, so a couple things. This is a great question. I love this. So I think the customer is always right. The customer is always right is wrong. It is one of the least helpful phrases to enter the business lexicon because it trains customers to be bad customers. If you come in and you think I am always right, then that turns into a lot of entitlement on behalf of customers. And we see that. I mean, hasn't everybody read an article about how horribly people are treating customer service representatives right now? It's terrible. But also, it's terrible for the people that are trying to deliver service because it means that you're constantly trying to like nail jello to the wall. You have to have boundaries as a business. And if you are saying the customer is always right, it doesn't allow you to apply those boundaries. That's why when we work with companies, we're really helping them create these clear and consistent processes for how do you deliver a customer experience so that your team knows what their path to success looks like. And it allows them to say yes, and it also allows them to say no. And if you are a company where you have a client or an employee that says no, and then immediately if the customer elevates or escalates their complaint, the executive's like, oh, it's fine. You are going to super demotivate your employee. And that's not good for your business either. So you have to have boundaries. And the customer is always right is just the worst thing for being able to maintain boundaries in a clear way.
Yeah, and letting your customers dictate your operations as well is dangerous because then you're not setting those boundaries. You're then really just in it to satisfy your customers only, and then the employees can suffer. I mean, welcome to public accounting. Like, welcome to, this is exactly why this is our whole career of like, just do what's necessary to make the customer happy. I don't care what it takes in the meantime. I completely agree with you. I think it's almost a toxic mindset to operate in that extreme. And it's so counterintuitive to what we've been taught as business owners to be so focused on the customer. And I think there's a balance there. I think like we're not saying to go the other extreme and be like, F them, who cares? You know,
Yeah.
treat them how you want. But it's like, you have to have, I think it comes down to you have to have an identity as a business and know what's important to you and what you want to extract out of that relationship so that you're doing the right steps to make that happen without sacrificing relationship.
Yeah, it's so true. And one of the things that you hear a lot when you're starting up a company is you have to know who your customer is. And
Yes.
that when I was starting up, so I came to this work. I had been doing it in corporate. Yeah, I got out of business school, started doing this sort of customer loyalty work, and that's another whole story. And then I ended up forming a company that was dedicated to the art and science of how a bra fits a woman's body. And so again, like another whole story. But when I was coming out of working with all of these lingerie companies and getting back into this world of customer retention and growth, I was trying to figure out who I wanted to serve. And I had been serving these lingerie companies, and that wasn't ultimately a great target for me. And I found it really hard for a long time to identify who my client was. And it took time for me to settle into a really solid place. And and now it makes so much sense, right? Now it's like, well, who do you work with? Oh, I work with B2B companies that have complex, onboarding and implementation processes. That sounds really clear. It just takes time. So sometimes when you're newer in your business and you hear people say, well, who do you serve? You have to know your ideal client profile. You're like, well, yeah, I also need to eat right and exercise and, fly to the moon and like whatever else that you're supposed to do in life. And it sounds so easy to say, and it's not always easy to do. But once you get it, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah. And I think that people, when they go through this ideal client avatar journey of figuring out who that is, they go with who they're best positioned to serve from a logical standpoint. Like these are the easiest people to serve from a here's what we bake and here's what they're hungry for. And there's a product market fit for these people.
Yeah.
But what they neglect to actually take into consideration is the type of person they want to serve and the type of person that's likely to have a long lasting relationship with them. And I think that's a misstep because when I first started, I'll give you an example because this literally happened to me and I'm realizing it. When I started out my business for the first time, I said, okay, I'm going to do tax returns and I'm going to do them for my fellow fitness professionals because they were the low hanging fruit market in front of me because I was with them all the time because I taught Zumba. So I said, that is my market because that's who I'm around all the time and that's who's talking to me. So then I realized, going into COVID, obviously this changed drastically because every gym shut down and everybody kind of got quiet with their businesses. And I said, okay, this isn't going to work. But also, these folks really just have a transactional relationship with me. Like they want their taxes done and it's a one and done thing. And I just thought about this and I said, well, who would I build a long lasting relationship with? And like, who would want me to serve them and advise them for years as opposed to the transactional April 15th one night stand? Who do I want to build a marriage with as opposed to that, quick relationship? And that's when I realized I'm like, oh, this is who I'm really looking for from a relationship standpoint versus here is somebody who will give me money quick for something I can do. And even though that's a hilarious analogy, it actually does fit.
It fits perfectly. And one of the things that you did in that search for your ideal customer is you looked at the person that bought from you early and you're like, oh, obviously I should serve more people like this. And it took you time to sort of take that step back and look at the bigger world. And that's critically important. So yeah, I mean, and this comes back to what we were talking about earlier about knowing your loyal customers. Those one night stands, I love that. Or I can't, I don't remember if that's exactly what you called them, but like
Yeah.
it was something like that. You may want to keep some of them, or you may want to keep some of them for a little while your business is still growing. And it's okay to shift. When I shifted away from serving lingerie retailers and manufacturers, I felt bad. I felt like I was ditching the people who helped me launch. But honestly, it wasn't serving either of us anymore. I was getting too expensive. My offerings were not designed for single shingle retailers that, may or may not be, making a ton of profit. And so, I kept trying to serve them because I cared about them, but it really wasn't good for them anymore. And it really wasn't good for me anymore. And so you have to honor the people that got you where you are. And I still maintain relationships with some of those key clients that I had, but they're not my clients anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah. And to drive the analogy home, what just came to mind was, okay, but like, know who they are, know if they are one night stands. And that's what they are. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But don't try to make them into wifey material.
Right.
And and don't let them redecorate the kitchen. They're not going to stick around for a while. Don't give them a toothbrush on the bathroom, whatever it is. Like, you know what the relationship is and act accordingly. But I think, like I said before, I think a lot of people try to make everybody so happy without acknowledging what is your relationship with that client and is it someone you want to be listening to. And it's so interesting because I love this conversation, Allie, because coming into this and talking about keeping your customers and retaining your customers, we've equally talked about how to establish selective customers and also who to listen to. And I think that's a really important thing that people overlook. You agree?
Absolutely. Ultimately, you're building relationships with people. You're building trust, and you can build trust with people and still only see them occasionally. You can build trust with people and not work with them anymore. So how you offboard somebody that you're not working with anymore matters just as much as how you onboard them. And, and by the way, sometimes people that I'm not working with anymore still refer me business. So, I love this quote by Maya Angelou. It's one that I go back to a lot, and you may have heard it. The quote is, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And when you make people feel valued in the relationship, it sets everybody up for better business. And I like to think it sets us up for a better world as well.
Amazing. So on that note, I want to wrap things up here and just let everybody know your book is called Keep Your Customers. You've mentioned that a couple times in the episode. Where can people find it? And also where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more from you?
Sure. So people can find the book wherever books are sold. You can also go to the book website, which is keepyourcustomersbook.com. And they can find me at alignmintforgrowth.com. And they can also find me on LinkedIn, both the company and me, Ali Cudby. The one thing I will ask is if you come and find me on LinkedIn, and I really hope you do, please tell me that you found me on the Keep What You Earn podcast. I get a lot of solicitations. And if I don't know that somebody's coming to say hi to me as opposed to, hey, I want to sell you something, then I may not know to accept the connection.
Perfect. And also, if you guys can do us a favor, if you're on Instagram, do me a favor and post a screenshot of this episode and let us know what one of your biggest takeaways was from today from Allie. Make sure to tag me at Shannon K. Weinstein at Keep What You Earn as well. And Allie, do you have an Instagram too that we can tag you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Ali Cudby.
Fantastic. Easy, guys. So just do at Ali Cudby, tag me, let us know what your biggest takeaway was. And guess what? I'm going to send you a copy of Keep Your Customers.
I love it.
So please tag us on Instagram. Let us know you're listening to the show. Let Allie know that you took something away, because that's the biggest thank you we can give her for her time, is to let her know what we took away and what we learned from this episode. And I know there was something. Don't lie to me. I know you made it this far. I know that you stuck around and you got some gold out of this conversation. So let us know what that was. Allie, thank you so much for coming on today and spending your time with me.
It was such a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation.